I'm the founder and owner of Key Growth Coaching and Consulting. I'm a certified Catalyst coach, and I deliver a series of one-day courses specifically designed for entrepreneurs and business owners. And one of those courses is on productivity. In addition, I'm the general manager for a place called Forum Social House in Bellevue, Washington. It's a 20,000 square foot venue where I've got all sorts of stuff going on. So the intention today is you'll get to notice some of the different skills that you implement and or avoid immediately to be more effective with your time, your productivity. Just kind of a quick overview. We're going to talk about strengths, or what I call gifts, beliefs about some productivity and time, a new vision for your productivity. And then we're going to hopefully do some work around your productivity, so along the way, make some notes, whether they just be mental notes or actual physical notes, up to you. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question or anything, just because we do have a limited amount of time and I want to give you as much as I can today. If you've got a story to tell, just keep it nice and concise as we go along here. So before we dive into, as we dive into our strengths and what the heck, what does strengths have to do with our productivity, which will all become clear as we go through here. Let me tell you a little story. About a month ago, I found myself entering a whole bunch of data into this really great tracking sheet that I built. And not a problem, other than, it was like 2 hours later, I'm doing this and I'm like sat back and go, wait a minute, this is not what, it was kind of like sucking my soul, right? Like data entry is not what I love doing, and it's not great at doing it. My strength is putting together the system, the structure, and being out there with people and really and making things happen. So it just kind of like occurred to me, like, wow, how did that happen? Can any of you relate to that experience? Find yourself doing something that, like, wow, why am I doing this?
Yep.
For sure.
Yep. So really, before we can look at how we are spending our time, I assert that we must get real with our strengths. Like I said, I call them gifts as part of my course, but we're going to call them strengths today. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about maybe one of the biggest ingrained cultural held beliefs that we may not even realize that we have. So I'm going to start by asking you a question. And I'm not going to give you any other context other than to rate it between 0 and 4. All right. So what's your life point average? Take a moment to think about it.
You mean 4 being awesome and 0.5 being like meh?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Hi, Louise.
Scale from what? 1 to what?
Scale from 0 to 4. What's your life point average? And Luis, that question is for you as well. All right. Does everybody got a number?
Uh-huh.
All right. Nick, what's yours?
I'd probably say 2. Even though my life is pretty good, it definitely can be a lot better.
Christopher?
Probably 3.5, I think.
Nice. Brian?
First thought was 2, but I'm going to give myself a 3.
Great. Luis?
Gary, what's the question? Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm not giving you much context here, but I just want you to, we're talking about what maybe the biggest ingrained cultural held beliefs that we don't realize we have. And I'm just asking you a weird question to start that off with. And that question is, what's your life point average from 0 to 4?
Life point. Oh, like where I am in the trajectory of my life?
Yeah. Rate it.
If you're rating your life, like 4 is like, it can't get any better. Like, this is awesome. Like, I'm in dreamland, and like 0.5 is like, just suck.
Oh, I'm a pretty satisfied person. I take a lot of things. I appreciate pretty much everything. I feel like I'm a 4.5.
Whoa, you went over the scale. You went over the scale.
I mean, that's not to say there's a lot of shit I wouldn't like to be different, but I mean,
yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great, Luis. So now I'm going to ask you all, how did you come up with that? How did you come up with that number?
How did I come up with the number?
And anybody can answer this.
You know, I looked at the time in my entire life, like 24 hours, the time that I feel like I'm doing things that are the minutia to keep the wheels going on all the things, versus the amount of percentage time that I could be in awesomeness, pinnacle gift, or just like living a full life. And that's why I say, like, it's not like, you know, look, you guys know me, it's great. Founder's Life's great, but I'm doing too much. And so I think the percentage of doing what needs to be done versus doing how I want to really live, that's why I came up with the number I came up with.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I've got a formula that I got from high school where I just put in all the factors and all the numbers and all the variables, and it just came up with 3.5.
Perfect. That's exactly, that's so perfect.
Yeah. I feel like kind of like what Luis said is like, you know, I'm very content. I don't buy into all the BS that we're told, you know, whether I'm on a flight to a country or got a lot of stuff, I really could care less.
Yeah.
Got amazing relationships. I feel like I allow life to kind of unfold for me rather than trying to force things. So I feel like I'm where I need to be. I'm very content, surrounded by amazing people. So
yeah,
3.5.
Well, it's really perfect. It's like you built this perfect little segue for me here, Christopher, which is like, think about it. Like, that's how we were taught to think of ourselves academically and individually. We were raised that way, right? All our formative years through school. What happened?
Especially as men.
Yeah,
there are women involved as well, but you know, looking at where we're at here. Yeah.
Luis, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I would say probably the polar opposite for what you're describing, Gary. I don't have I don't recall in my life being like, if to put a parallel, like if I think my thing is you know, a half point away from perfect, what I probably messed up the scale. I think I might have said 4.5. I didn't mean that. I meant, sorry, 4.5 out of 5. So it would be 3.5 then.
Yeah.
3.75. I haven't had coffee today. No, but thinking it's that high is not a correlation to the messages I was sent about myself. So that's not
totally
throughout school or
which isn't important. What really is to get here is like, what happened when you came home with your report card and you had an A in English and a D in math? Not that anybody in here had that happen.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. That kind of academic praise. Yeah, that's fine. But it's just kind of like, oh well, that's what you're supposed to get. Like, it was great, but like, you know, that's just normal.
Yeah. Well, but what happened when you came home with that report card?
Nothing. You mean what happened? Like,
yeah, like you got an A in one class and you got a D in the other.
Oh, I didn't. I got A's, bub.
I'm sure you did. Okay.
The lesson here is that they said, what's the deal with the D or the F?
Right. You got a pat on the back.
What you're saying. Sorry. I take it all literally, Gary.
I got you. Go get some coffee. You got the pat on the back for the A, right? Your parents went, oh, good job over there. Okay, now get to work on math, right? Get to work on D. Why, which is weird, right? Like if you think about it, why didn't they just say, hey, real, you need, this is your strength, really keep rocking that English? And not that you ignore the math, but you sit there and go like, hey, what, where is our perspective there? So we were really taught growing up to be good at everything, right? We wanted to be well-rounded. We wanted to have, be competent at everything, do well at everything. How does that thinking affect us now? Like we were brought up academically and through our culture. Like, how does that affect us today in our business and in our lives?
I think it influences us to think we have to do everything. We need to be great at everything. And, you might be really good in some areas, but if you're not good or great in others, then you get down on that. And why should we get down on ourselves for things we're actually not gifted in the beginning, right? So I think that's what I'd say.
Yep. No, that's perfect. Anybody else have any thoughts there?
I think in the very, very, very beginning of entrepreneurship, the idea that you're one person wearing 20 hats, and as you develop a team, you're handing off various caps with different roles and titles and strengths, needing people with different strengths and weaknesses. So in the beginning, I remember having to do it all and just hating on some of these things that I had to do. But as time goes by, I've hired people that actually like to do paperwork. I didn't know that existed, and that's fantastic. That's all they do. And my business is very paperwork intensive with a lot of documents and translations and lawyers and whatnot. So they love it, that they're case managers and that's what they do. So this idea that we're taught to like focus on what we're weak at and try to improve it as you grow your business, it's basically find people who are strong in the areas where you're really weak.
Yeah. Well, and it's really great because your business is around for 8 years, you said? So
far, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like you've had the fortune to actually go, wow, hey, look, I've got this is the stuff I don't like doing, and here's your strength. So I applaud you for really already applying those things. I think Nick, you'd like to be that a little further along there, right? Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying I've gotten all my hats off my head, but working toward it.
Yeah, well, and it'll be interesting to kind of like as we go through this is really kind of notice how much time and I think that I'm going to share a screen with y'all, and we're going to take a little ride up the pyramid here. So we don't often like to talk about what we're incompetent at. Does anybody like to do that? But if you think about all of the things that we do, work, personal life, whatever it is, what are the things, and where do things, where do we stand on each of those things? So let's celebrate our incompetence for a second here. And I'll give an example for myself, and you can think about, hey, what are things you're incompetent at? So for me, if there's something wrong with my car that I can't put some fluid into an opening, like there's nothing I can do about that car. I can't fix it. I can't do. I'm not going to be doing that. That just doesn't work. Or or spending. If I go to fix a printer, I may fix it eventually, but it's going to take me an hour to fix that printer for whatever reason, right? So that's something I can say that like fixing mechanical stuff that's an area I'm incompetent at. And anybody else?
Yeah, I'd share that. And maybe even like, general construction, it's just something that I've really never done. And not to say I wouldn't be interested in some way, but I'm not building stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not getting the hands dirty with like under the hood of a car or building from a general construction. That seems to be something that I'm incompetent, basically.
There you go. You said it. I'm proud of you. How about you, Christopher?
IKEA furniture. I don't think I can put that together.
Perfect. Yeah.
Without getting no. I think technology. I can have very big, very holistic views of how things work. The actual technology itself, coding, those kind of general ideas, not my strongest. That's where the CTO would have to come into play. I'm more conceptual, but the actual functionality and how things work, I couldn't even begin to consider how, if I was the only person on the earth, I think we would lose 98% of all technology.
98.
98. I know how it works, but I don't understand how it works, if that makes any.
Yeah.
All right. Who else wants to celebrate their incompetence?
Well, I think I already said mine, which was I hate copious amounts of paperwork. I don't know if that's really an incompetence or just a stubborn mental block or something. But anyway.
It's actually not too. It's interesting. So now I'm going to present this a little bit of a different concept here. Is if we start to think about all the things we're doing, and I said like soul sucking earlier when I was talking about doing data entry, right? Like there are things that we all have different strengths to, and Brian, you really hit on it. Like I couldn't believe that I found people that love to do paperwork, and also if you look at it, it's kind of like, wow, Christopher and Brian, you both built businesses that are not your strengths. Right? Christopher built a technology company. Brian, you built a paperwork company, and yet they're not our strengths. But we start to look at, I know that I need people that come in there and do that. And why is there other people? Because it affects their energy differently. Right? If I'm doing data entry, if you think about it, if you're old enough to remember, when you left things on in a car and your battery drained. Right? So if you think about the things that we do from an energy standpoint, and we look at it like a car battery that's running us, it's like when we're doing stuff that we're incompetent at, you've left the lights on, the headlights on, the lamp light on, you've got the radio on, the windshield wipers are going crazy, right? Like you've got everything's on, but the engine's not started, right? And so it's just draining energy, right? And so now, if we look at things that way and we go to things, hey, what are we competent at? So what are some things that we're not good or excellent at, but we're competent at it? Like I'm competent at answering emails, right? Going through email, doing that thing. What's something that you're competent at?
Yeah, I would just say general kind of like the kind of marketing, the like pushing out the marketing for these sort of things or events,
organizing events, marketing, those kinds of things. Yeah. And while it's probably not draining it like you've left everything on in the car, you've remembered to turn off the headlights, but it still kind of drains you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it's like you couldn't have got to this point in this level without me actually doing it.
Yep.
But it doesn't mean I'm good at it, or it doesn't mean I'm great at it, and doesn't even mean it fulfills me.
Yep.
Right. So I think that might be the difference between competent and the other things up there.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. Hit it on the head. So now let's look at the things that we're good at. So what are things that we're good at? I'm good at like managing staff, right? Give me staff to manage. I'm good at it. Like I can get them into the right places, into the right positions, the right schedules, deal with some of those things.
I'd say like strategic thinking, and you know, because I'm saving some for the excellent, but
yeah.
But strategic thinking and kind of like, you know, maybe being that horse, that the freaking workhorse.
Yeah.
Or maybe the whip. I don't know.
Yeah, right. And what there is to notice about this area of good, things that we're good at, is, you know, we've turned off all the lights in the car, so it's not really draining the battery. It's almost neutral. Maybe you've left, you know, one light on, and maybe it can be a little bit like, if you're doing that a lot, it kind of drains your energy a little bit. You're not left after doing it going, oh geez, that was awesome. Now let's take a look at the area that we're excellent, or what I like to kind of talk about as our gift. So what are things that we're excellent at, that's our gift? And I'll give my example really quick. It's really easy. This is I'm in my gift. I'm going to be more energized at the end of this training than I am at the beginning of it. I'm going to be, when I'm out here helping, dealing with people, giving some sort of whatever it is, mentorship, training, leading, doing these things, that's in my gift. Like, I'm really clear. So I have more energy at the end of it. It's like I put the charger on the car battery. So what is it for you?
I want to hear the others.
Yeah.
Well, just to rewind down to incompetency, I think perhaps that would be self-assessment.
You know what you're excellent at is self-deprecating humor. So that's good too.
Yeah. I will think about this, see what I can do here.
Yeah.
Luis, you are, I think you're great. I don't know if it's the excellent, but it's the, you're great at putting, what's the word, disparate, but random disparate like pieces together to like, it's almost that strategic, like the strategic thinking, the like vision, the putting the pieces together, and ideation and creativity as a creative director. You know, that's, I think you're incredible. Like, that's what you're excellent at.
Yeah. He's an ideation puzzle solver. Yeah.
Execution as well. There's a lot of execution that comes into place for Luis, I think.
Yeah. How about you, Christopher or Brian? What are you excellent at?
I think on my side, I think there's two, probably strategy. I think that's where I get pulled into a lot of conversations, and then relationships as well. You know, definitely foster strong relationships and those ties. Yeah. So I think those are probably my two.
Yeah. And do you feel more energized after being in those kind of in that mode?
No, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
I would say that another thing that I'm good at figuring out how to make things happen, regardless of, you know, working with what I've got.
Yeah.
To make something happen. I mean,
yeah.
Just figuring it out, not giving up on that, and finding a way to make something work.
I mean, it's great. A good founder trait.
Yep. Brian?
I think for me, it's like business development and sales. I mean, when I lock in a new client or a new partnership that'll, you know, provide a source of clients that I get energized by, I'm stoked. Yeah. And when they all, but then again, the same processes, if I fail, actually, it's kind of like a stock that just dropped 40%. Like it's kind of, so I'm not sure if I'm excellent at it. It's just when I actually, you know, land the maneuver, and I'm excited about the result, and my contribution to it.
Yeah, well, I think that you're definitely in your gift. It's your reaction to it that is the difference, right? Like when you're doing it, when you're in that process, when you're making that happen, you're definitely loving it and you're energized. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's the result, right? The result is just that moment. Like if you land the sale, then it's like, yeah. And then it's the result. If it doesn't land, then it's a little bit like, dang it. But that's all really great. And I have a whole day course spent on discovering your gift, and there's a lot we could do spending here. But everybody just kind of think about how much time you're spending in your gift or your strengths, as opposed to, you're incompetent, competent, or even good, and just kind of notice where you're spending your time. So now I want to jump into talking about beliefs and habits that could be holding us back in our productivity. Okay. So another quick round of questions here is, what do you currently believe about time?
Finite.
Yeah.
Linear.
Yeah, my ability to use it. Geez, there's time goes a lot faster now than
It goes too quick.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy.
So it's finite, like there's not enough, goes too quick.
Yeah, and at the same time, yeah. Sorry, I don't know what to say there.
Oh, that's great.
It's a little bit of a mystery sometimes.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I do is I kind of disattach time from productivity. I look at productivity as something different. So it's not how much time I'm spending, it's actually, am I getting projects done? I feel like this attachment with time and money is false. So I look at more, what did I get done versus how much time did I spend on projects? Yeah. And then I feel like my time I get to spend better in other areas where it balances me out, but I still get stuff done.
It's really great. Perfect. Yeah. So all very typical responses, Christopher. That's a little bit, you're getting a little bit ahead.
I'm sorry. I think time is limited, and time is money. So I just hustle all the time.
Well, it's really great because all of these things, the only one I didn't hear that I normally hear is, I wish I had more, right? Like, normally I get somebody that says, I wish I had more, right? Like that would be the thing. So what they're, and then there's, we have this belief around that time can be management, right? Time management. And that's kind of a little bit what you're speaking to, Christopher. And then another one is that all time is not equal. All activities don't generate the same or equal amounts of success, results, and earnings. And then we got to kind of ask ourselves, like when we look at the really successful people out there, those, high profile CEOs that we all know their names, like how do they do it? Like, what is it that they're doing? Are they spending a bunch of time in the minutia, or are they focused on the stuff that they're the best at and they have other people doing it, right? Really, really good stuff. Which is a really good point here. Like, so we've talked about strengths, and we're talking about like kind of some of the limiting beliefs around time. And if we start to think about, have you all heard of the 80-20 rule? Yeah, I think Christopher, you and I might have talked about this at some point, actually. Go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I was just answering your question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if we look, and just to use an example here, is if when we look at the 80-20 rule, and we can think about how we want to apply it to our productivity in our lives, but just as a really simple example, if you live in an area that's got traffic problems, and you can really think about like, hey, if they address, and there's been plenty of studies to go around and show this, if you address 20% of the problems, the 20% of the biggest part, you can have 80% of your solution done. And it's the same way, you can kind of look at it the same way with our productivity. It may not be 80-20, right? But if you can take that 20% of working in your gift and your time and applying it now to your productivity and increasing that, you'll really get a difference. So I'm going to go over a couple of things. How many of you are great multitaskers? No. But we all remember a time where that was on our resume, right? Everybody put, I'm a great multitasker. So that is certainly a belief, a myth, something that we want to not say that we're great at, right? Because it's BS, right? Like you can't be a great multitasker. Every time that you switch from one task to another, it takes something to come back. And I am the king of squirrel and going off to the next thing. So I'm not trying to be critical around anybody if they're getting distracted a lot or move from one project to the other, but really noticing the impact that has on your productivity is one thing to notice, right? So answering an email when you're in the middle of building a project, right, doesn't work if it's taking you away, if it's not related to the project or doing the project, right? And I want to talk a little bit also about, anybody got anything they want to add around multitasking?
Yeah, I would just say that knowing that, and yet being someone that's, like undiagnosed ADHD, but pretty certain I've got it based on the thing that I saw about it. There's a lot of conflict there, and a lot of I think accepting what that is and what its effect is allows me to say, okay, well, a certain amount of time, I'm just going to allow all random distraction. I'm not going to worry about that. And then that kind of actually spends that energy or spends that thing. And at some point, usually late at night or when everything else has died down, I can be in a focus mode.
Yeah,
very much so. And so I just know that's going to come and not worry about it and sweat the details when it's not, and just be ready for when it is.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit about that, Luis, because I think that there is something there. What's the, how can you create that quiet space earlier in your day, right? Like, how can we create that productivity?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Doing it, and we all, and Brian, I think you mentioned that earlier too, and Nick lives this world, but we have this experience of doing it all ourselves as entrepreneurs often, right? And how do we get away from, and if you do, and I'm not going to take the time now to go through it, but if you do some math and you really think about it, when you're working in your strength and in your gift, and and you can look at how much money that generates for you and your company or your life, or fulfills you, however you want to look at that reward is, compared to doing the things that are draining of energy and doing all of that, and look at where that is. And Brian, I think that maybe you can speak to that a little bit with telling us, hey, what was it like when you got to offload some of this paperwork thing instead of having to do it yourself?
It's just a great relief when you suck at something, but you have to do it. And your analogy is perfect. It's like a drained battery, which I actually did to my car about a month ago, so I know how that feels. But yeah, so it definitely takes away all the drag.
Yeah, well, you said it perfectly. It's a great relief, right? That's what it felt like. It's wow, I offloaded doing this paperwork in your circumstance, and that felt like a great relief. And it is, and it's not just a relief, it probably has you be in a better position, not just from an energy standpoint, but I would guess that it also has you in a better position financially, because you're not trying to do the stuff that you don't like doing, and other people are doing it that they actually are very competent at it, or good at it, or whatever the case may be.
And cheaper,
right? That's the number, right? That's what I'm talking about. You're doing, it sounds like more sales oriented conversations, moving the business forward, and not having to focus on the stuff that's dragging it down. So that's really, really great.
Yep.
So the last habit I'm going to kind of talk about is where is it that you're currently located in your work? And what I mean by that is, are you in a traditional time-based model, or are you in a entrepreneurial model? And when I talk about that, well, let me just give you a quick history lesson on that, right? Like, so a quick history in time and productivity. Back in the day, right, how we were thinking about things, we had a lot of self-limiting beliefs about what was possible with our business and our lives. And in the old way of living, we were working the land and associated equipment for survival. Like, it was literally like, that's how we had to survive. We had to work the land. We had to do these things, right? And then in the early 20th century, we had different ways of thinking, like production lines. And we were a cog in a big wheel often, right? So like most of our lives are back at that time, maybe not for us here, but for our society, was they were a cog in a big wheel. You do X for X amount of time and you produce Y. And then we got in the more recent past into kind of this big company thinking. And most people were employees paid for time at work versus specific results. So over time, as companies grew larger, there were millions of salaried employees. And they got paid for that time rather than like they produced a widget. So most of us grew up in that kind of environment. And now here we sit, right? And so it's not like, that's just kind of a mentality and a thinking for us. So by contrast, the entrepreneurial model, share my screen again. The entrepreneurial model is based on value creation rather than time. Creativity, problem solving, developing relationships, and a focus on transforming lower cost inputs into higher value outputs. And it's what makes the entrepreneur successful. This is a very different way of thinking than the time-based model that we're all very conditioned to do. Does that make sense for everybody? Anybody got any questions or thoughts around that?
That makes sense. It's good.
Yeah. So we really get the strengths, especially in this room, of what it is that makes us an entrepreneur, right? And it's doing all of those other things and not grinding and doing the time and producing a widget or doing that. So that's really great as well. So now I want to talk about reimagining your productivity a little bit, and then take a few minutes to kind of work with one or two of you as far as, hey, what does it look like in your life? So what I propose and what I preach, if you will, is really, everybody's probably heard of time blocking. And so there's a different philosophy here around time blocking. So whatever you're using for your time management or any of that type can fit inside of what I'm talking about as far as your productivity goes. So I talk about personal time first. And I really like to create this for people as it's a full day, right? And so I have one client, maybe he's on this call, that really trying to work with him to get like, hey, I want your personal day to be a full day. Meaning that.
You mean we shouldn't work on Saturday and Sunday?
Yes. Yeah. To take a full day for yourself and to do that. Because what happens, Nick, sounds like you have some experience in this. What happens to your Saturday when you spend up until noon or 1 working on Founders Live?
It it bleeds all the days together. It's a draining experience in the sense, and it turns out that day, even like, because everything started bleeding together, but it turns out like even if I stop at 12 or 1 p.m., all of a sudden that's like a work day. It became a work day, and it's really emotionally and just energetically, it doesn't allow me to rejuvenate and refresh. Yeah.
Yep, which is exactly what we're trying to do with that day, which is why we say it's a whole day, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's 2 days, maybe even 3 days when we get going, right? But it's really important to have that, because if you don't have that break to rejuvenate, as you put it, to be able to relax, be able to enjoy the life that we've got, you're gonna have a tough time really executing the CEO level stuff, right? The founder stuff, because it's gonna, without that, you miss that. So I'm gonna really put, like, that's something, if you can all implement that one thing right now, is scheduling your personal day first every week, so that you know that I've got this whole day and I'm not working. So what I call Pinnacle Time, you can think of it as strengths time, right? Is dedicating days to spending as much of it. Often we can't spend all of it, but as much of it as we can to where you're working in your strength. So for Brian, that might be, hey, I'm only doing sales on these days, or I'm doing partnerships on these days, or whatever that might be. And then a prep day. And the prep day, like, so for me, my prep day is Monday. I spend my Mondays only doing prep work. I'm not doing a bunch of meetings. I'm not delivering courses. I'm not doing, I'm only focused on preparing my week at hand. And we need that time.
Gary, you'd say that prep is in assistance or setting up the Pinnacle Time, and it's to, things like maybe scheduling, things like having that time that you're doing. I think prep can be a bit confusing sometimes. And I think that's the one that's easily, like, you slide in the stuff that, again, starts draining you.
Yep.
So the difference between Pinnacle Time and prep time is it's in service to make sure that your Pinnacle Time is optimal.
Yes. And it's perfect what you said. It can be a little bit insidious how we let things slide into our Pinnacle Time if we're not intentional about it, which is why that prep time is so important. Is we want to take care of whatever needs to get taken care of, so that our Pinnacle Time or our strength time is being really used effectively, and we're not sliding in paperwork, data entry, the other things, right? Yep, really great. So the last one is a purge time, and this isn't like a dedicated day necessarily or whatever, but what I want to have you look at is all the areas of your life, and it might be your desk that's in front of you right now, and it might be your garage, or it might be that kitchen, or it might be whatever, where stuff is just really disorganized, it's cluttered, there's stuff that should have been thrown out a long time ago, or blah, blah, blah. All of that has an impact into being present and able to focus, especially focus on our Pinnacle Time. Because if we're, and this might also be, by the way, be your email inbox. This might be, how many of us have all of our documents and files in folders organized the way that we would like them to be? I knew you would say that, Christopher. Well, the rest of us regular humans don't have that. But you get what I'm saying, right? So a purge time is where it's a time that you dedicate to, hey, I'm going to really clean up all the messes in my work, right? Or my life, or get these things put away and organized. And, I can't express the value of that once it's done.
No, totally.
So
Gary, I gotta jump because I have a podcast recording.
Yeah, see you, buddy.
This is awesome, guys, and we'll definitely be doing some a number of focused topical things turning the new year around the same thing. So hopefully see you all there. All right, good job, Gary.
Great. Yeah. See you, Nick. All right. So let's see if we can do a little bit of work here. We're right at the end of the hour here. Is there any thoughts around working in your strengths? Like, how much time are you spending working in your strengths? Give it a percentage.
A small amount of time. I mean,
yeah, it's probably, so for some of us it's small. Hopefully it's a little bit larger. But yeah, if it's, for me, when I first kind of went through my discovery process with this, I was spending 15% of my time, if I had to guess. Now I'm much more in the 60-70% time, which is great.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I would probably say, kind of going back to what Brian talked about, being early stage, there's just so much that I have to take on that I normally wouldn't, that doesn't fall in my pinnacle time. But I would say a large percentage, for the most part of my real focus, I would say 80% of my focus really goes towards my
strengths.
But I have to be good at, these other things too. So it does take up time, and, just when you're part of a 3-man team,
yeah,
you take up at least a third of all the stuff that gets done. So
yeah. And I would just encourage you to look at are there some things that you or the team are doing that maybe it can be offloaded, maybe it can be something that somebody else is doing, and there's all sorts of options there, which I'm sure you know about. But anyway, Brian.
So I mentioned my team's in Beijing. I used to be over there, and because of COVID, not just because of COVID, but anyway, I'm here now, which means I'm probably on this business. I'm only doing like 2% of my time is really in the zone.
Awesome. What do you?
No, it's not awesome at all.
Yeah. Well, what do you see? What do you see that you can shift? Is there anything that just kind of is present for you now that, like, how do I get that from 2 to 15%? Right.
Right. I mean, it's really requiring me to have a strategic shift. Perhaps maybe I need a new business, or focus on a different strategy for the business. Recently, we're considering starting like a podcast series that I would run here, and that way I could be energized and kind of in the business without having to, but in a new strategic direction, something exciting for me. But otherwise, I mean, there's little I can do to meet and greet people in China, because it's really a face-to-face kind of business. Right. People need to trust your ability to do some pretty sensitive stuff in terms of their personal life.
Yeah. And maybe it's something that where you've got something that's maybe a supportive business, product, service, or whatever that you can start managing here that gets to have you working in your gift more, but it still promotes and supports your other business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really great. That's right.
Yeah. Love that.
Or maybe not, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
and maybe not.
That is one line of thinking. And I have gone down there. But then there's also the, cut your losses and look, I mean, not that I have any, but like mentally cut your losses. I'm attached to the business,
Yeah.
And then think about like, what are those strengths that how do I achieve something like 70-80% of my time doing what really energizes me? That's something that I need to figure out in the future.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, and just kind of to wrap things up here, everybody, is that it's hopefully this gets you thinking about and aware about how you're spending your time, what you're doing, and productivity in general. Like, what does it look like for you? And that's the real intention here, is to begin to notice how you're spending your time, and also that energy part, right? Like, man, this is just draining, or am I like, man, this is great, love doing this, right? And just start thinking, having that awareness is the biggest, is the kind of the biggest thing to achieve and take away out of today. And what there is to really get focused in on your strengths, or as I call them, your gifts. And there's also a lot of, like, if you really, so with my courses, and which my courses are going to be offered through Founders Live as well, probably a different variation of them. But, we spend a whole day really discovering your gifts, and we spend a whole day, so call it 8 hours, looking at your productivity. And a lot of that is what we don't do as entrepreneurs, is take a whole day to really look at how I'm spending my time, because a lot of it's always coming at us, right? Like, it's coming at us like we don't have any control over it. And the reality is that we do have choice. And what you want to get to is a spot where you've looked at the whole picture of everything that you're doing and make choices about, I'm not going to do this, I'm going to do this later, or I'm going to delegate, and having those choices and making sure that it's not overwhelming, or that it's not that we're doing everything, and that you're getting to work and enjoy your work as an entrepreneur, working in your gift, working in your strength. So look for that. And with that, I think we'll wrap it up. I want to say thank you, everybody.